Good morning, everyone. My name is Megan Montgomery. I'm the Executive Director of the NCBFAA, and we are so pleased today to be able to bring you a webinar in conjunction with our partners and friends at Expedock, our affiliate members. We're going to be hearing today from Alex Kaliada, who is a global operations and business development leader with over 12 years of experience in international supply chain and logistics. During his career in freight forwarding, Alex worked across Europe, Asia, and the US for companies like D-Trans, Kuehne & Nagel, and most recently Flexport, where he was a senior manager of global operations. Currently, Alex is the director of new market growth and logistics giant from Strategies, and the director of new market and strategy at JD.com, an e-commerce and logistics giant from China, helping the company build its presence in the US. Alex spends his free time advising early-stage startups on the complexities of global trade, primarily in data extraction and automation space. We are also going to get the chance to hear from King Alandy D. King is a tech entrepreneur and the founder of Expedock, the AI-powered process automation service valued at $4 million by the early backers of Facebook and Airbnb. He is an engineer from Stanford University who built products for Intuit and Shop, which is the #1 e-commerce in Southeast Asia, to name a few. King has been transforming leading supply chain companies globally through Expedock and has successfully implemented game-changing automation with CEVA Logistics and JUSDA USA. And with that, King and Alex, we're so excited for today's presentation. King, I turn it over to you.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about digital transformation of operations and accounting for forwarders using artificial intelligence. So Alex, I just wanted to start off with a couple statistics that I've seen here. Given your experience in ocean freight in various companies, right? You've worked at Kuehne & Nagel, you've worked at Flexport, and really a bunch of supply chain companies across the board. I'm curious to get your thoughts on some of these numbers. So the first statistic I have prepared for you is over 70% of companies have a digital transformation strategy, or they're actively working on one. The second statistic is only 21% of companies believe they've already completed their transformation. And lastly, we have 55% of companies without a digital transformation strategy believe they have less than a year before they begin losing market share. So what are your thoughts on these statistics, and what do you think about businesses and how they're prioritizing digital transformation today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, King. And this is very interesting statistics, right? And we can also look at the years here when this statistics was published, and we can definitely see a trend where more and more companies are starting to think about digital transformation, and they have one in the works right now. So that's very clear, right? Like really, what's happening in the world of freight forwarding today, and I guess that could be our first question that we can discuss here today, right? Like, what is happening really in freight forwarding as it relates to the digital transformation? And we all can see that the industry is very rapidly digitizing, right? And why this is happening is because freight forwarders all around the world, small and large, they have realized that really their job is becoming less and less of moving cargo from point A to point B, and a lot more of their job is now in collecting data and giving transparency and visibility to their clients, right? So they can empower them to make better decisions and to drive their supply chains in a smarter way. So forwarders around the world are realizing that they can't rely on their kind of manual processes anymore. They can't really track their shipments in Excel anymore, right? It just doesn't help their business. That they can't really scale with such processes. And really, if with the new normal now, with the pandemic, a lot of people are working from home, and so there's a new normal right now. You can't really turn around and ask your colleagues what's happening on this shipment, or why are we getting billed so much for this shipment, right? Like, there needs to be data somewhere, and people across the company need to have access to this data to be empowered and to drive day-to-day decisions. Because, like, yeah, of course you can still use Slack or email, but we see more and more companies are drowning now in emails and really this kind of digital communication where they just reactively have to address all of these questions that are sent their way. So really, as this trend is evolving, we see that more and more companies and freight forwarders specifically have huge demand for some digital solutions, right? And like, they can't really build anything themselves because it's, first of all, too expensive. It's not their business, right? Their business is to do freight forwarding, and those legacy systems, like if you build one for your company, it first of all takes a lot of time, but then secondly, you can't just build a system and use it for many years. Everything is changing very rapidly now, so it has to be very flexible, and you need to be able to maintain and constantly adjust your system to the realities of the world, and that's very expensive. So that's why really the freight forwarders are looking into the startups, really the tech world, to build those solutions for them. And of course, if there's a demand, now we see more and more younger stage startups, they're trying to build those solutions, they're getting into the space. But the problem really is that this is such a huge and complex process. The whole end-to-end journey for global freight forwarding is just too complex, and no single company can really build a solution that will cover the whole process end-to-end. So they tend to specialize, and they solve problems one by one, the ones that they are able to identify. But really, in the end, what happens is you have so many different systems and so many different technology providers that are solving specific issues, but it's all not connected and integrated, right? And so you have another problem where you have data disparity, and really you have all of these systems that you are using, but they're not talking to each other. And so this is kind of the general trend that we see happening in freight forwarding today.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you here. We've worked with a lot of logistics companies of all sizes over at Expedock, and all the way from enterprise customers like CEVA and your typical mom and pop freight forwarders that you mentioned. And something I've noticed with all of these is that, especially with the larger customers, they have systems that they've adopted at different points in time. And because of that, they don't really integrate that well with each other, and the systems end up being really siloed, right? And so you've talked a lot about how all these freight forwarders are now trying to, and more broadly, right, supply chain businesses, they're trying to adopt more technology so that they can gain that transparency, visibility that they can provide to their customers. So I'm curious, right, what are the consequences of siloed data?
Right, and I think you're exactly right here. There's so many systems that companies are using now. They've been adopted at a different point of time, and so yeah, it's really hard to integrate. So really, if you think about it, you have like your sales team working in a CRM, right? A client relationship manager system, something like Salesforce or HubSpot. Then you have your TMS. It can be a homegrown system that you've built, or you're using someone from the market like a CargoWise or Descartes or something like that, right? Then you potentially have your rates management systems that your pricing and procurement team is using to constantly update the rates. But even then, if you have an RMS, the rates management system, you probably have a couple of those, because if you're doing air and ocean, you probably will use a different one for each mode. And still, they will not cover all of the business that you're handling, right? You'll have some contracts and some rate sheets separately in Excel or other forms, right? So essentially what you end up with is a combination of structured and unstructured data. You have some information, some data in your systems, and some of that is just in documents, in Excels, and really, when you're moving that information from your Excel sheets into the rates management systems, there's a lot of manual data entry that is happening there as well, that is very prone to human errors. And some of the data entry is also delayed. So really what I'm getting to here is you have a lot of these systems, some of that have structured data, some of them have unstructured data, and those systems don't talk to each other, right? So essentially people have to verify that information in different systems is correct. So they need to reach out to someone in the pricing and procurement team, make sure that this rate in the RMS is correct, in fact, right? So there's a lot of back and forth communication that needs to happen for such verification, and that's a very kind of high effort, labor intensive, time intensive process. So people used to or tend to deprioritize such activities, right? Like they will prioritize something that is more urgent for them, like a shipment critical activity. They don't want to miss a cutoff because that would delay a shipment and essentially create even more problems down the road. So really the problem with those siloed systems that you end up with in the end is you're not sure whether you are able to trust the information in your system, because it can say one thing in one system and another thing in a different system, right? Yeah, like basically some of that information can be missing, some of that can be outdated or just plain incorrect. And so what are the consequences? Coming back to your question, some consequences are late payments to your suppliers, right? Like you basically take a lot of time to process those invoices coming in, but then also that affects collection from your clients, because you can't really bill your clients until you verify what has been billed by your vendors to you, right? Then you have increased operating expenses. You have all of these teams talking to each other offline, trying to verify this data and manage those disputes if they have any. And then you also have unhappy employees because they have to do this redundant manual work over and over. You have unhappy suppliers because they get late payments, and you have unhappy customers because they have to deal with a lot of mistakes. Because you can't really trust the data and you can't provide them one single source of truth. So these are, of course, problems, right, and consequences of the siloed data. But what could be some solutions here? Like, what solutions can freight forwarders implement today to start tackling this issue? And I think the first one really that you need to start with is you need to adopt a standardized data model with defined data policies, defined controls. Right, so you basically have some expectations as to what is this data that needs to be coming in and what is the format and things like that. Then whenever appropriate, you need to implement automation. There's so many solutions in the world today that can streamline your processes and make them more efficient, right? You can use RPA for some of your workflows. You can start using automatic data extraction using AI, right? Freight forwarders deal with so many documents. They need to extract this data. And you can implement some workflow tools that are automated. So coming back to data extraction, for example, if you have, if you're extracting data automatically and it enters this data into your system, it can trigger someone on your team to do something. So you're basically looping those workflows together. Yeah, another thing you need to think about is data accessibility. How do you allow people in different departments access the data that you have in different siloed systems? But yeah, these are kind of the consequences and some potential solutions to this. Yeah.
Right, that's really interesting. And just to go a bit deeper into the consequences you mentioned, right? Like, I think one of them was like late payments to suppliers and late collections from your clients. So I don't know, but it seems like most businesses don't really care about paying their suppliers late per se. But the concern is more in late collections. So I do agree that's something I have noticed as a major pain point in this data visibility problem that we've been talking about, right? Where the supplier has to, you need to either eat the cost of the amount that you're going to dispute with your supplier, or you're just going to collect from your customer really late. So that is one of the more specific use cases that we've seen with regards to using technology for this reconciliation process and data visibility more broadly, right? And I actually have a statistic on that prepared for you. So according to Gartner, 2019, 73% of invoices are unaudited. So Alex, do you think this is real? And if so, right, like what are some of the challenges in auditing and in flagging discrepancies?
Yeah, so I think it definitely varies from a company to company, right? Some companies are more sophisticated, they have better protocols for their data, and they make more sense of it. And so they have probably for them, it's not 73%, but I think on average in the industry, that can very well be true, right? And first of all, that's because all of I just described about siloed systems and siloed data, how it's like really difficult and it takes a lot of time to verify such information and like confirm that the invoice that you're getting is in fact correct, or whether you need to dispute it. So getting specifically like a little deeper into this particular use case, right? Like what are the challenges of auditing invoices and flagging the discrepancies? Really, I think, first of all, the freight forwarding industry has always been very dynamic. There's a lot of changes happening all the time, but these days there's even more uncertainty, right? Like we know space and equipment is very tight, so forwarders have to book very long in advance, like 2-3 weeks ahead of time, and rates change very quickly. So really you have a problem where at the time when you are making a booking, you don't really know what rate will be effective. And in order to kind of record this in real time and update this rate in real time, you have to implement a very robust process where you have your team really monitoring that gate end date at the port of origin to know what rate is effective. And then you still need to confirm this new rate that is applicable with the carrier, update your client. So very redundant, very, very manual process. Again, such processes get deprioritized. Like people, operators have more urgent tasks in their day-to-day, really. So that's why this type of activity gets delayed, and in some cases just gets avoided, right, and left off. And so that leads really to the first problem, right? Why it's challenging is you don't really know whether the rate estimate or that accrual that you have in the system is correct. Did someone update it on time, or was it incorrectly added from the very beginning and no one updated it, right? So that's first problem. Really, the second problem is there are a lot of changes that happen during the lifetime of a shipment. So you can incur a lot of extra charges. You can make some changes to a shipment, right? Like basically, if you divert it to a different port due to congestion or something like that, you incur additional costs. And so keeping track of all of these changes during the shipment life cycle is very difficult. And in most cases, there's not a single person that is kind of in charge of that. So again, it gets avoided, it gets forgotten about, and in the end, you have kind of the same problem where you don't know like whether those estimates that you have in the system, those accruals, they're correct, whether they include all the charges, whether they include the detention, the merge that could have happened in the end of the shipment. Right, so really, I think what are some takeaways here? Even if you have a very robust process, a good system that allows you to track those changes, to manage those updates for the rates and things like that, you're still in the end not quite sure that you can trust all of this information. So you need to still collect the different documentation to dispute some charges with your clients or with your vendors, or to pass through the charges to your clients, right? You need to collect those documents, extract this data, and really make sense of it and use it as a proof to your clients. So I think really, as far as like what solutions can be implemented here is you can like there's more and more solutions in the market now where you can leverage AP automation, right? Essentially, I see it as a 4-step process for AP automation. You start with extracting the data, right? You need to make sure that you're digitizing the information in the documents, like PDFs that you are receiving from different stakeholders in the shipment lifecycle. Then the second step is you need to connect all of your different systems into kind of one source of truth, so that this unstructured data becomes structured and it's all in one place. So you connect your TMS, your RMS, and unstructured sources together, and then you're able to use AI technology to reconcile this data across different systems and flag any discrepancies. So this will help you to fix issues in real time and manage those invoices and flag those discrepancies in real time. But also the main benefit is you're able to collect this data in aggregate so that you can improve your business processes, right? You can make smarter decisions. You can see what is constantly wrong, which charges are constantly missing, and you can improve your process this way. Yeah.
That's really helpful. I guess, is this like the secret of some of the top supply chain businesses that you've worked for before? No,
Well,
I'm just kidding. I know that information's pretty secret. You probably have an NDA, so no need to get into that.
No, I'm not going to disclose any secrets here, but really I think the focus is on data, right? Like how much can you trust this data, and how much can you bring all of that into one source of truth that you can actually trust? And that is kind of that should be the main goal when implementing any solution, really.
Got it. You all, everyone in the crowd, you all heard it from Alex himself. It's all about the data. Totally agree with that. So I guess we did touch on the AP side of things quite a bit. And you gave a broad recommendation for the solution, but I'm wondering, let's discuss how can companies leverage AP automation to improve their AR performance?
Yeah, so if we're talking about AP and AR, right, account payables and accounts receivables, they're kind of two separate processes, right? One is like you're paying your suppliers, another one, your clients are paying you and you're billing them, right? But I think that these two processes are very connected and really dependent on each other, right? Because especially in the freight forwarding industry, your main job is to ensure that you're capturing all the costs and you're able to pass them through to your clients. You don't end up eating any like unexpected costs yourself just because you're not leveraging the systems you're using, essentially, right? But so the problem here becomes you can't really bill your clients until you know for a fact what you're gonna get billed yourself. So really solving this AP question first helps you get better at AR, right? By leveraging AP automation technology, you're essentially able to speed up your processing of APs, and this will allow you to bill your clients faster. So you'll be able to improve your cash flow dramatically by doing this, right? So if you're able to process all of the incoming APs in real time, you can bill your clients in real time because you know where you're getting billed. Otherwise, if you're processing these invoices one by one, and as we just discussed before, it takes so much time, you're only going to bill your client like really a couple of weeks or a month later, which is a huge hit into your cash flow. And so really what it like one benefit is like real time, right? You do it very quickly, and this way you help your cash flow. But then secondly, if you're using the right technology for that, you're able to also flag those discrepancies that are constantly occurring. So like I already briefly mentioned, you're able to come back and see, okay, what is wrong in my process today? Why am I not capturing this data for every shipment? Why is this line item always missing in my accruals? Or you can see things like, oh, this vendor is always overcharging us. They're like, every invoice is incorrect, right? So if you're able to track such information and such insights, you're able to make smarter decisions, and you can kind of improve your business overall, right? You adjust your process, you negotiate better terms with your partners if they're constantly overcharging with you. So instead of doing this transactionally and just being very reactive, you're able to proactively see what is wrong in your systems today and how can you improve that.
Makes sense. Yeah. So I'm sure the crowd is wondering about some specific technologies that you think people should be using. So you know, like for example, you know, the TMS, RMS, some other automation tools you mentioned. Do you have any recommendations off the top of your head?
Yeah, so as we discussed, there's so many different solutions and systems to consider these days, right? And you have to be kind of careful when you're doing that, and not just build so many siloed solutions that then don't talk to each other. So really, when considering a new TMS or a new solution, really, the first thing I would always think about is how connected it is to the world, right? Does it kind of represent the network where all these different players in the supply chain, or in this kind of relay race called a freight forwarding shipment, can collaborate with each other? Can they communicate with each other, exchange documents within that system? So that's one thing, right? There are so-called collaborative platforms when you can onboard different partners together and work with them within that system. Then the second factor is how well are these systems integrating with your legacy solutions or some other systems that you are using today? Like basically how easy it is to integrate with them and leverage all of these data you're collecting in your legacy systems, right? In other words, the question is like, how does this system that you're about to implement help you get closer to that one single source of truth, the centralized look at your supply chain, where you look at that and you can know for a fact, okay, this is the right information. I don't need to check 3-4 other systems to do that. But that's it's going to take some time, right? So really, besides the most kind of famous, I would say, TMS systems in the world, like CargoWise and Descartes, that many companies are using, there are also systems like Speedy, BlueJ Solutions, ShipThis. They're just some of the systems that we found are a lot easier to integrate with. Yeah, so that's on the TMS side. For RMS, yeah, the systems that companies are using successfully now are Catapult, Trade Tech, right? They're not going to be your one-stop solution for everything, but at least if you have quite enough volume for ocean, for example, or air, you can put in one or the other and do it effectively. But really, I think where we need to look at as freight forwarders, coming back to like all of these initial problems we've been discussing today, right? How do you build those bridges and connect all of these different systems you're using into one source of truth? And for that, there are data automation solutions that are available in the market. There are also AP reconciliation solutions like Expedock is using, for example, right, or is implementing for their customers. So yeah, I would say these are the ones, like if I were looking at solutions, I would think about how do I help my business connect all these systems together into one source of truth. And I'm sure you as the founder and the CEO of Expedock can share a little bit more about like how you make this happen for some of your customers as well, right?
Right, so you're absolutely correct, Alex. We focus on data automation and AP reconciliation here at Expedock. Now, if anyone in the audience actually wants to just have a casual chat, right, I'm more than happy to jump on a very quick call and see how we can apply our artificial intelligence technology to your workflow. again, a lot of these supply chain businesses, each one operates differently. People use different sets of, TMS, RMS. A lot of people have their own systems, right? So we are able to work with a lot of businesses that don't just have these general integrations, but also have their own in-house systems. Now, what it is exactly we do is we help really build that source of truth, which you mentioned a while ago, and enable your team to see exceptions and things you should be disputing extremely conveniently. So there's no effort into it. All you need to do is send us the document and we'll take care of all of the manual work for you. So all in all, if anyone in the audience, again, just wants to jump on a quick call, feel free to shoot me an email via king@expedock.com. So now I'm going to jump into question and answer. So I do want to say to anyone watching this video right now, this is a re-recording because the actual webinar, we were unable to actually record it properly. There were some technical issues. Good thing Alex over here was more than happy to reshoot with us. So given the technical difficulties, I'm just going to ask the same questions that the crowd from our presentation asked. We had a few hundred freight executives actually joining us on Wednesday, and here are some of their questions. So I'm going to start off with the first one here, Alex. How is blockchain and or AI playing a role in our industry?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of movement in the blockchain, and as we were talking today, AI as it relates to freight forwarding. But really, if we start with blockchain, right, the key concept there is digital trust. So today, with the world of internet, you cannot really verify a lot of information, right? Things can be duplicated easily. Can be coming from any direction, and you don't really know whether you can trust this information, this data, this document, or even like a milestone of a shipment or a timestamp or not. And so really this is something that blockchain can hopefully potentially solve for us, because it enables trust between users, right? There's an easy way to exchange currency, like payments and other data between trusted sources that are part of this blockchain. So how is it done in the supply chain? It really executes the code that says something like, if these goods arrive in this condition by this time, then pay X amount of this currency to this person, right? And then it's going to be enforced by having a trusted authority confirm this event, that it actually happened. So things like smart contracts are quite common now. They're getting more and more traction in this industry, because that's essentially like this third party, a robot third party that is able to verify that the information is correct and actually some event actually happened. For AI, I think the major use cases in the freight forwarding industry now are around unstructured data processing, right? When you have to deal with huge amounts of data that humans are not able to easily kind of go through and make and capture some insights from it, right? So AI is doing it a lot better. As opposed to OCR technology, for example, if we're talking about data extraction from documents, OCR technology uses templates, right? It's so basically you need to set up a template for every document that you're working with. And since in freight forwarding, we know that there's no standardized format. All different parties, they're using different formats. They can, like each document can differ from each other. Templates are not that helpful, really. So we need to use AI that uses computer vision to capture documents without any templates, right? So that's where it helps Another, I think, use case is the large-scale data processing. AI can be used to predict demand, to do allocation management. This is a huge use case, I would say, for freight forwarding, right? Like, how do you make sure that you are allocating your the volume of freight to the right partners or vendors or carriers, right? Like, you have only so much allocation with each carrier. How do you do it wisely and in real time? That is something that AI is able to help you with. And lastly, things like route planning. There's a lot of things that go into play, right? Like weather, uncertainties, some disruptions in the supply chain. So AI is able to help you optimize the routing and really also search for some patterns in large amounts of historical data. So if you're collecting that historical data, that's again a huge amount of data that humans are not able to go through, but AI can go through that and really optimize some routings and say, okay, this is actually the more valid transit time for this route versus what carriers are claiming, right? So yeah, I would say these are kind of the major use cases that we've seen today.
Got it. Another interesting question we have here actually is, what are your thoughts on the possibility of an application hub, a digital translation hub where email, TMS, CRM, and back office share alphanumeric identifiers? Do you see this as a possibility in the future, near or long term?
Yeah, that's indeed a great question, and I think it kind of goes back to how do we make sure that each entity has some kind of a unique identifier, and we can verify that this is in fact this particular entity. So I think a good use case here is, for example, I can give an example from fintech, right? Where if you look at the fintech industry, there is a standard of payer ID now that you're able to identify any unique customer at a universal level. So essentially, all of these institutions, they got together and implemented a standard for that. And I think that is the direction where we really need to go, right? We need to make sure there is kind of again, there's no duplication. Like in different systems, the same company is mentioned with a different user ID. That's not ideal, right? We need to have, again, kind of coming back to this one source of truth. And I think it is really it's doable in the freight forwarding as well, where every payer, every entity is easily identifiable. It has a unique ID, and this will lead to more transparency, more security, really around the world, where you can like trust that information, and you know for a fact that, okay, that's the user ID. There is some kind of course, mechanism on verification, but you can trust that this is actually the company you're dealing with.
Absolutely. And I just want to jump in and give my thoughts on this one too, because at Expedock, we actually see ourselves as a key driver of this entire system being described, right? Particularly with our ability to turn physical documents into structured data that we're able to move and connect to your existing systems. So, documents are here to stay for a while. And with us, it's as easy as sending those documents over. And next thing you know, that information's in your system already. And there's really this entire ecosystem sprouting in the world of logistics, right? Where everyone's trying to push for this structuring of data as a broader movement. And we're excited to say that we do have the expertise to be doing this, as we've been performing really well for a couple of our existing customers. Yeah, and that brings us to our third question from the crowd. With regard to the slide on key technologies, tools, and solutions, how would you approach the challenge that on one hand you do have different systems in play, but you also have a legitimate challenge with data quality? So how does a solutions team account for the gaps in data and data efficacy before identifying a solution? I'm curious to hear from this person what they mean by issues with data quality as well, and just really dig into that. But unfortunately, the crowd can't really reply to us.
Yeah, I think if you're thinking about data quality, the first thing that comes to mind, like the most important one, is there are currently no standards or expectation as to what this data will be, right? So basically, there is no infrastructure built to make sure we're capturing only the right data, right? So coming back to what I mentioned before, the data protocols, the models, the format, right? It all needs to be aligned across the whole system. So you have to have its match across all the different systems you're using in your company. Otherwise, we're getting back to this challenge of siloed data that we spoke a lot about today, right? And with siloed data, you can't improve the quality of that data collectively. You need to first build one source of truth, and then you can improve this data there and then replicate it in other systems, right? So that's the only kind of way here. Because by doing that, you not only harmonizing the data, each system that you're using will require a set of fields leading to an overall unique standard. So this is how you can implement one standard that is used across multiple systems that you're using. Then the second issue here with data quality is the way the data is entered into your system, right? Currently, it's done by humans in most cases, and it's prone to mistakes. So if you're using AI, there's definitely a higher chance of getting this data correctly, right? Because if your AI is smart enough, it can capture 80 to 90% of data right away. And then most companies are using so-called human in the loop component that is able to verify that remaining part of information that your AI is not confident about, right? So in the end, you're able to get as close to that 100% accuracy as possible if you're leveraging AI in a smart way. And then, like the last piece I'll mention here is data quality is something that can be maintained over time, right? It's something that you can constantly keep improving. And again, it comes back to, are you able to surface those insights that you are getting by receiving disputes from your clients, by receiving incorrect bills? Are you able to match it with the data in your system and highlight the issues in an aggregate, right? Basically having this visibility into what is constantly wrong, so that you know which parts of your process you need to focus on and improve. So I would say these are kind of the three main things I can bring up about data quality, really, and challenges.
So at Expedock, I can chime in here too. We get the data both structured and unstructured, and we're able to flag discrepancies to improve data quality overall. We connect to your TMS and RMS all the way to your physical documents like a carrier invoice and AP invoice that the customer receives. And this ability of us to centralize this data really helps bridge the gaps in data quality from all of this fragmentation of different tools people use in the workspace today. And the data milestones of a shipment, all of this will ultimately surface as we integrate these tools, which will allow us to fix issues relating to all of the data. We are able to build bridges to see what is problematic and how we can improve it. All right, so on to our fourth question over here. What are your thoughts surrounding the use of AI options to fulfill audit functions? So you have this entire industry, right, of freight bill and audit businesses, and really they sell themselves on convenience, right? Because there are so many exceptions that take place throughout the life of a single shipment that falls outside of a typical audit environment. So how do you think AI is able to do this?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, AI is definitely the way to go to solve this problem of freight audit, because like I mentioned before, one of the major problems is we have to deal with more exceptions than rules in freight forwarding, right? And AI is not a rule-based system. It is able to contextualize the problem or an issue, right? So as opposed to like a rule-based system that can only be programmed with a specific set of rules, in this case, you can contextualize and see kind of what are some other factors that impact this or that decision. So essentially, I do think that definitely with the freight audit, it's almost impossible to build a system that is rule-based that will be able to solve this. However, with AI, if you're teaching it over and over on some specific use cases, you're able to solve this problem in the long run. Of course, at first it will need to be kind of done in combination with humans, where they will backfill some of the parts of the problem where AI is not trained enough yet. But in the end, I think we can get to a very kind of high accuracy rate using AI when we're talking about freight audit.
Yeah, that's exactly why here at Expedock, how we push this forward is by using human in the loop, right? Because it's tough to get 100% accuracy with just pure artificial intelligence. Our AI technology does 90% of the work with quite a lot of accuracy. Then we work through some of these false positives using experts, freight experts on our team, who then double check and audit the audit performed by the AI, right? And that helps us make sure that really nothing gets overlooked here. So last question from the crowd is, in a data-rich world, the source providing data matters. What are the carriers doing to provide accurate data in a standard format?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think this is happening anytime soon. The problem is carriers really have no incentive to agree between themselves on a standardized format. And I doubt that will be happening anytime soon. The issue is that the carriers still mostly compete on price with each other, right? Of course, now there's more and more other factors that are coming into play, like service is starting to play a bigger role in this, but still price is one of the major ones, right? So it's really not in their interest, not in the carrier's interest, to make it really easy for freight forwarders to compare apples to apples when they choose this or that carrier, right? There needs to be this touch of mystery that the carriers add by using all of these different, like the rate structure is quite complicated, right? There's all of these surcharges, and this surcharge is applicable in this case, but not in that case. So like building a lot of that complexity to kind of still make it a little bit difficult for forwarders to compare apples to apples in the end. So really the burden here, I think, is falling on the forwarders to come up with some unified standard, really the forwarders, the other technology providers that work with carriers and other really suppliers in this industry, they need to find solutions that can take in different formats from different players and organize them internally and analyze this data themselves. So luckily there are a lot of technology providers that are focusing on this right now, and from my understanding, this is exactly what Expedock does as well, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so that wraps it up for our question and answer. Thanks for joining us today, Alex. It's been awesome learning from you, especially given your experience in some of the world's top ocean freight and broader, logistics supply chain businesses.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, King.
Now, I'm just going to talk a bit about Expedock in case anyone over here is interested in streamlining the way they manage their data. So thousands of shipments are now being moved internationally through Expedock's technology. every single week. And through our tech, we help eliminate a lot of the manual processes and actually help automate work like data extraction and data reconciliation. We're on a mission to build the data infrastructure that will help drive unprecedented efficiency and profitability to all players in the industry. So if you're interested in learning more about Expedock, stick around in this video and I'll share a bit about what it is we do. So at Expedock, when you work with us, all you need to do is give us your unstructured data. It doesn't matter what format it's in. It doesn't matter if you've never seen the template before. We are able to extract data automatically from these different data sources using our context-driven artificial intelligence, which actually understands freight terminology. On top of that, we're able to provide you powerful reports to answer any questions that you might have, whether it's about how correct your vendor's billings are, or if your data is being logged properly on your TMS. All of this, these are just some of the examples that we're able to provide to our customers. So again, just to recap what we enable you to do, extract data from any resource, whether if it's a PDF, invoice, we're able to take that data and catch exceptions that should be disputed. Second, we help you focus on your customers. So instead of all of this manual work that you typically need to do, feel free to just touch base with us and they'll be able to start focusing on just making your customers happy. Lastly, we help increase productivity, become more data-driven with easy access to your information, pull reports in seconds so that you can get your data where it needs to be. So again, here are some of our customers, and here are our quotes from some people that we've worked with.
Thank you so much.
Oh.
Hello.
Okay.
Thank you so much, King, and a big thanks to Alex as well. We are so grateful for your time today. And as you mentioned, for the folks listening later, I am so sorry for the technical difficulties in the first one. This is a re-record, and we were grateful to get the chance to speak with you folks twice. So we thank you very much, and we look forward to continuing our webinar series. And for the folks on the phone, if you have any questions, you can always contact NCBFAA. We will get all your questions answered, as well, of course, as Expedock. Thanks, folks, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye-bye.